Hello my dear sewing friends, it's Alisa here, and the most wonderful time is just around the corner. So today I would love to share with you how to make these super adorable gnome ornaments. Now you can make these for your own Christmas tree, or you can also make these as gifts, because I personally have a yearly tradition where I make a handmade ornament every single year and then I give them to my friends and family. To get started, you really don't need much at all. A project like this is great for fabric scraps, and I like to use linen for that beautiful rustic texture. But of course, you can also use cotton or perhaps any other fabric that you might have on hand. You will also need faux fur for the beard of the gnome. You will need something to stuff it with, like stuffing, and of course you will need a little ribbon. And I like to use for that this little twill tape. To make it super easy for everybody, I actually did make a pattern. It's a free pattern. It's available to everyone, and the link will be in the description of this video. You will find this pattern on Google Drive that I use for Project Dresser Girl. This file will be among some others, so once you open the link, just find this file and print it out. It is just a one-pager, and you will see that in the left upper corner there is a 1x1 inch desk square, and in the right upper corner there is a QR code. So once you print this out, and if you want you can also file this into your sewing folder, and next year when you want to make it again, you can simply scan the QR code with your phone or your tablet, and it will take you to this original tutorial. Let's take a look at the pattern pieces that we will need to cut. We will need to cut one for the nose. Make sure that you add your seam allowances to it, and I prefer to add 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch seam allowance. You will also need to cut a little ribbon about 8 inches long, or approximately 20-21 centimeters. Then we will need to cut 2 pattern pieces for the hat. Once again, add your seam allowances. 4 pattern pieces for the little mittens or little hands or gloves. We will need to cut 1 pattern piece for the hat rim as is. Seam allowances already have been added to this one. And we will need to cut 2 for the body. One of the pattern pieces is going to be cut from the main fabric, in my case it's linen, and the other pattern piece is going to be cut from faux fur. If you would like to, you can also add a little label. If you do want to add a label, this is the first thing that we're going to do. Place it on the back pattern piece. You can center it if you'd like to, and then stitch it down. Next, let's prepare some of the smaller pattern pieces. We're going to grab the pattern pieces for the hands. There's 4 of them. You're going to place 2 of them right sides together and then stitch with the seam allowances that you have cut. Now, working with such a small pattern piece can definitely be a little bit challenging, especially when we're talking about sewing a curve. So take it slow and steady, and you can always stop, readjust, and then go again. Another option would be just to simply complete it by hand if that's something that you feel more comfortable with. Once you have both of these done, we're simply going to turn them out. Now, because the seam allowance is so little, we're not going to clip it. Take one at a time, pinch it, like so. Then grab the back piece of the body and about 1.5 inches down, place this right over here on the edge. That's how we're going to stitch it. I am working here with white thread, so hopefully it is more visible to you. And this is how it's going to look like when we're done with both sides, attaching both of the little mittens. Next, we're going to do the nose. I find it easier to do it by hand, but you can of course use your sewing machine as well. So first, grab a little piece of the stuffing and roll it into a ball, like this. Then, grab the pattern piece for the nose and turn it wrong side up. Then, start folding about 1/4 inch in, because that's the seam allowance that I used. If you used more, you will need to fold in more. And then we're going to do a running stitch on that folded edge. When you have gone all the way around, it is time to place the little piece of stuffing on the inside. So stuff it in, and then pull on a thread to gather the edges. Then do a couple of stitches from side to side to bring it all together and finish everything with a knot. Next, grab the little hat patterns and grab the ribbon. On one of the hat patterns facing right side up, you're going to take your ribbon, place it like this, right at the very top, in the middle, and then secure it by going over it a couple of times with a straight stitch, just like this. Next, on the same side of the hat, we're going to do a running stitch right here on the very bottom within the seam allowance that you have selected. With the running stitch, make sure that you do not secure it at the beginning and at the end of the seam, because we're going to be using it to gather the bottom of the hat to bring it to the same size and measurement as the top of the body. We will do this gathering technique on both the back and the front of the hat, the front being the one with the ribbon. Now grab the rectangular pattern piece and fold it in half. And if you're working with natural materials, finger pressing will be just enough. Then grab the front of the hat, get the ribbon out of the way, take the rim of the hat, place it like so, so the raw edges of the rim are facing the raw gathered edges of the hat. Now this piece is going to be a little bit wider than the hat itself, and that's all right. We're going to cut off the extra that we don't need. And now let's stitch it down with a straight stitch within the seam allowance. Now for this step, stitching within the seam allowance instead of stitching right on top of the seam allowance is going to make it easier for you to hide all of the stitches once we put the ornament together. Now we're going to attach hats to the bodies. The hat with the ribbon and the rim is going to be attached to the beard. So you're going to place it like this, right sides facing. There we go. And before you do that, you can snip the ends of the rim that are peeking out because we don't need them. And the hat that's just by itself, you're going to place it right sides together with the back of the body, align it and stitch it once again. Here's what we have once done with this part. Next, let's open up the front pattern piece. And we'll also open up the back pattern piece. But on the back pattern piece, it's easier if you press the seam allowance down. After that, place the ribbon on the inside of the project and bring these right sides facing. First, I like to pin right here at the top, then bringing the sides together. Here at the bottom, you can mark for yourself about a 1.5 inch, maybe 2 inch opening that you want to leave, so that way we can turn this right side out. When working with faux fur, especially one that's that long, you will need to gently tuck it into the inside of the project, so that way it doesn't get all caught up in the seams. And now we're going to stitch from one side of the opening to the other. Next, reach to the inside, grab the ribbon, and then pull it through. There we go, our little guy is starting to take shape. Next, I'll grab a little bit of stuffing, but I'll start by stuffing just the part of the hat. Grab the nose and a hand sewing needle, and we're going to stitch it down right here, placing it underneath the rim of the hat. This part is definitely a little bit fiddly, so if hand sewing is really not your cup of tea, perhaps you can opt for some glue. However, if I were you, I would actually cut out a little bit of that fur where the nose is going to sit. Otherwise, the glue is going to have a really hard time sticking to the fur. Once the nose is attached, let's go ahead and fill the rest of the body with the stuffing. Next, bring the seam allowances of the opening to the inside, so fold them in. There we go. Then bring both sides together and finish it off with hand sewing stitches. Now at this point you can certainly be done, but I personally like to add one more little thing because I truly think that it sort of completes the entire look. Now I don't have a pattern piece for it because it really is that easy. Simply grab a little scrap piece of fabric and cut out a rectangle, like this one. Next, decide which way you want his little hat to lean, this way or this way. Now, insert your needle into the hat, bring it out, pull it through the knot so that way it creates a loop, and then tug on it. Continue doing that multiple times with different length stitches so that way the hat sort of tilts towards one side. This area will need to be small enough to be covered by this little patch that we cut out. Now simply use hand sewing stitches to attach it in place. Make it look like a little handmade patch. That's the whole magic of this little added element. Well, there you have it. We made our gnome ornaments, and I truly hope that these will bring you joy and happy crafting and sewing time. If you want to see more gifts to sew for Christmas and other celebrations, then click right over here. I do a series every single year, so there's plenty of ideas. So click right over here. I'll be happy to see you in the next video. Bye!